All right, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. And in today's video, we're going to be doing a walkthrough of the Phantom machine. And this is a Windows-based machine on HackTheBox. It is medium difficulty, so we're just gonna go ahead and get started. So we'll start off with the Nmap scan. So what I like to do is I will run the Nmap scan like so. We'll use the -pn flag. This is going to disable ping scanning. And then we'll do the --open flag. And what this is going to do is this is only going to run the TAC-A scripts only on the ports that are open. And the TAC-A script is going to do the operating scan, the version scan, and it's going to run default scripts. And that can take a really long time if you're doing that on all ports. So this is only going to do that on the open ports. And then the -v flag is for verbose. So this is going to show us the ports that are open as the scan is running. So we're just going to run this. This might take a few minutes. All right, so the scan has finally finished. So we'll just look at the results. So if we look at the ports here, immediately we can kind of tell that this is a domain controller. So we have port 88 open, which is Kerberos. We have 53, which is DNS, which means that this domain controller is also acting as a DNS server. We have LDAP running. We have RDP running on 3389. So obviously we're dealing with a domain controller. So we scroll down a little bit more, we can actually see the information about the domain. So we have our domain name, which is phantom.vo. We have the computer name, and then we also have the FQDN, which is just the computer name plus the domain name. So since we're dealing with a domain controller, we need to add this entry into our host file. So we can do that by simply just doing sudo nano etc host. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add the IP. So we're going to copy and paste that in here. And then we're going to add an entry for the computer name. And then we're going to do the domain name. And then we're going to add the FQDN, which is just the computer name plus the domain name. And you want to make sure your host entry looks just like this. Whenever you're dealing with a domain controller, you always want to have this entry into your host file. Whether you're doing the OSCP or you're in a real engagement, you always want to have the entry for the domain controllers in here just like this. So we're just going to save this. All right, and then we're going to answer the first question. So the FQDN was dc.phantom.vo. What is the name of the SMB share that can be read with the guest account? So this should be easy. We can do this with netexec. So we're just going to clear our screen. Now there's numerous tools that can read shares, but I really like netexec. So we'll just make sure your syntax looks like this. We'll just do the computer name, and then we'll do tac-u, and we'll check for null auth, and we'll do tac shares since we don't have credentials. Okay, we got access denied. Did it give us, did you need to crack a hash? Okay, guest account. So it says it can be read with the guest account. So we can just use guest, and then the password doesn't really matter. Okay, so we have some shares that we're able to read. So we have the public share, and then we have the IPC share that we can read, but this is a default share. So this is probably not gonna have anything in it. The department share looks interesting, but we don't have read access to it. So the public share is the only one that really sticks out because it's a non-default share and we're able to read it. So we can do in packet SMB client to actually read this share. And then you're going to make your syntax with the domain name, which was phantom.vl. And we're going to give it a /. And then for the username, it'd be guest. And then blank password. And then we'll do @DC. Okay. And then now if we do shares, okay, we have the public share in there. So we'll just use public. And then if we do a ls, we can see what's in this share. So we have this tech support email. I would assume there's probably going to be credentials in there. So we'll just run a git command and download this. Okay, so we'll just download this file and then we'll just exit out, clear our screen, and then ls, and then just cat this. Okay. Okay, so let's just read this. Dear tech support team, I have finished a new welcome email template for onboarding new employees. Please find attached the example template. Kindly start using this template for all new employees. Best regards, Anthony Lucas. So we have a user. Anthony Lucas is one of the users. A Lucas at phantom.vl. So we're just going to add that into a user list. Whenever we find usernames, you want to add those into a user list. So A.Lucas, or A Lucas actually, at Phantom. So we already have the naming convention. So it's just the first initial and then the last name. Is there anyone else mentioned on this email? No, there isn't. So we'll just add that. Save that. Okay, and we have this PDF that's base 64 encoded. We can easily decode this. So we'll just copy and paste this. Cut our screen, and we just do coded text, coded underscore email dot text. All right, we'll do base 64 -D. So it's a PDF. So we might, I might have to save it as .pdf. So email.pdf. Okay, so PDF document. So now we can just open this and view what the contents are. Okay, so dear, we are excited to have you on board. Below are your user credentials. So we have a password in here. Please log into your account using these credentials. For security reasons, we strongly recommend that you change your password immediately after your first login. If you have any questions or need assistance, feel free to reach out to our support team at techsupport@phantom.vl. So we have another username. So tech support, I would assume, is a user, or it could be a distro for all of the tech support users. But we'll just add that into our user list anyway. So we have tech support, and then we also have a password. Let's copy this, and then we'll save this into a file. Password.text. And then also we're going to update our users list, and we'll include tech support in there just in case. All right, and then I'm going to run the netexec command again just to see if I'm able to enumerate users with it. No, we can't enumerate any users. Okay, so we could try seeing if we can authenticate with Anthony Lucas. And then we'll use that password, cat password.text. So we'll just copy and paste this. Okay, that didn't work. Did it work for tech support? Okay, guest. All right, so what's the name of the SCB share that can be read with the guest account? So that was public. What was the default initial password for users at Phantom? Okay, we got the password. What user on the Phantom main is still using the default password? Perform an RID cycle or RID brute force attack to get a list of usernames. Okay. So we can do that using, should be able to do that with netexec. Just don't remember the syntax. Might be RID brute. Okay, yeah, RID brute. Here, a process. Yeah, let me take off this password and just use guest. Okay, there we go. We were able to get all the usernames using a RD brute. Now we need to just save all of the usernames into a file. But I do not remember the syntax on how to filter for just the usernames. I do have it in my notes, so I'm going to cut when I get the syntax figured out. All right, so I was able to figure out the command to filter out all of this extra wording. So we just want to get the usernames, and we do have some stuff in here, but that's okay. Like, you can leave that, it's all right. But yeah, so I was able to just use the cut command using a delimiter to filter out all this additional text, as well as everything that's inside the parentheses, because we only need the usernames. So I have it in my notes here. So it's a good thing to have notes and to copy and paste all these commands that are very hard to remember for future engagements and future pen tests, because you will forget commands and you will need to reference them in some way. So it's always good to have notes for that. But I have all the usernames in a list. So now we can do a password spray and spray that password across all these different users. So this is something that I do on real engagements. We do password sprays all the time, and they're very useful because there's a lot less of a chance of you locking out an account doing a password spray, since you're testing each account only once with the same password. So you can do this with netexec, but there's a bunch of other tools that you can build to do this that can automate this for you, but we'll just use netexec since there's not that many users. So yeah, we'll just get started with that. So we'll just clear our screen. Let's do netexec. We'll do smb dc, and then we'll just do -u, and then we'll give it the name of the user's file. And then for the p, we'll just give it that password. And then we'll copy and paste that password in here. Make sure we do single quotes because there's special characters. Always use single quotes whenever there's special characters, or the terminal won't be able to parse it correctly. So, and we just hit enter. Okay, then why did that not work? Okay, why did that not work? Why did it not work? Oh, I have to, so there's a flag for continue on success, or else it'll stop after the first successful attempt. Guest. Okay, so we got one. So we can ignore the ones that say guest. So if there's not an actual user, if you type in any username that's not an actual user, it will default to authenticating as guest. So that's why it shows a plus, and then we see guest. So we can just ignore those, and we can just look at this one. So this one was actually an actual user still using this password, which is poor password hygiene. So yeah, now we have an account officially. So we're just gonna copy and paste this, and then just gonna run netexec again. And then now that we have an account, what I like to do is I like to check what that user can access. So we'll see what shares that they can access. Maybe they can access that other share that we didn't have read access to from the very beginning. So yeah, the department share, they do have read access to it. So that's probably going to be where it's headed, where we're going to have to go for the next step. But I'm just going to answer these questions. We're going to answer these questions as we go along. So we'll just copy and paste this in here. What is the name of the file that is an encrypted volume? With credits for our Brian, find another SMB share that can now be accessed. Look at the files on the share. So yeah, that's where it wanted us to go. So we're just going to read the department share. So we're going to use Impacket SMB client. Just going to change this to the name of the user. So this will be our Bryant. I really like this HackTheBox machine, by the way. It's very realistic. Feels like something that, you know, you would see on a real engagement. We spend quite a bit of time looking at shares, and you'd be surprised. There are passwords in shares that happens during real engagements. So don't let this fool you that this is a HackTheBox machine. This is very indicative of what you will see in real life if you work as a penetration tester or if you're doing any type of internal network pen tests on AD environments. So this is great practice for what you're going to see in the real world. So department share, we're just going to do use departments share ls. Okay, we have three folders. We'll look at the finance folder first. Expense report, invoice template. Okay, there's probably nothing in there. Let's see what's in HR. NDA template, employee handbook. Okay. What's in IT? Okay, got Wireshark, Veracrypt, Debian file. Got some exe files. Oh, we have a backup folder. Okay, IT backup. Let's get that file. That looks interesting. Whenever I see backup files, they always stand out. So I'm not sure what this file extension is. I've never seen this file extension, HC. Okay, let's exit. Before we exit, let's just read it. Let's see if we can cat it. Okay, we can't read that. Can use strings and see. Maybe there are some hard-coded credentials. Okay, nothing in there. Probably have to Google what this is. Don't be afraid to use Google. I use Google all the time. What is an HC file extension? You always have to Google stuff. You never stop learning as a penetration tester. Typically indicates an encrypted virtual disk created by Veracrypt. Okay, so that is what the question was pointing to. What is the name of the file that is an encrypted volume? So we're just going to copy and paste that in here. What is the password for the Veracrypt volume? Use hashcat and a wireless and or rules file generated with the hint given at the start of the box. What's the password for the Veracrypt? Okay, I'm gonna have to look up some information on this. How to crack Veracrypt backup.hc files. Breaking Veracrypt containers. How to decrypt. All right, so we can crack this this Veracrypt backup file using hashcat. So the first thing we need to do is we need to just convert it into a hash that Hashcat is able to crack. So we can actually run this command, with the help of Google and Gemini. We can actually do this like so. This is going to extract the header, and this is going to save this into the verocrypt primary.hash. So we'll just change this. So we're going to change the if variable to the name of our actual backup file. So this is going to be the IT underscore backup underscore 201123.hc. Now hit enter. So, okay, so we now have the hash. All right, so now if we remember, we're going to need to create a custom word list. So should you need to crack a hash, use a short custom word list based on company name and simple mutation rules commonly seen in real life passwords. So we already know the company name. The company name is Phantom. It was in the initial Nmap scan. We have dc.phantom.vl. So I would assume the company name is probably going to be Phantom. And we just need to generate a custom word list. So we can actually have Google actually do this for us. So let's go back, extract the embed. These are just different options. And then we have our hash modes. So these are the potential verocrypt hash modes that we'll need to use with Hashcat. So we need to try all of these. So here's our custom word list. So we're just going to save this. And then we're just going to, we have a for loop that we can run, which is going to try all of the different hash modes. So we're just going to copy and paste this. We're going to have this run. And this is going to run Hashcat with all the different hash modes. All right, so Hashcat finished. So we're just going to look through all the results. So it ran Hashcat on all the different modes. So it should only work on one of the modes. So it didn't work on this one. Exhausted, it didn't work on that one. It didn't work on that one. It didn't work on that one. And it worked. So it was for mode 13.721, and we got cracked. So the password was Phantom 2023 exclamation point. So now we should be able to access this file. We might need to be able to download some software to access it. Okay, just gonna ask Google, do I access this backup file? It's correct. Yeah, guys, don't be afraid to Google. I Google all the time, especially when there's a good chance that you're going to come across stuff that you've never seen before, and don't let people, scare you away from asking Google. I Google stuff all the time, so you're never going to stop Googling. So, all right, so we need to install verocrypt. Okay. Before we do that, let's go ahead and type this password in here. So it was Phantom 2023. Okay. Unable to locate verocrypt. Okay, so I got the verocrypt package installed. So we just need to mount that backup file. So just gonna copy and paste this command. First we need to create the mount point. So we'll do that first. And then we can mount the backup file inside this verocrypt backup folder in our mount directory. Enter password. So the password was Phantom. Forgot the password. It was Phantom 2023. 2023. The exclamation point. Okay, so now let's ls mount, and it should be there. Okay, and we have all of the backup files, or everything that was inside this backup folder. What is the file name in the backup image from the Veracrypt volume that contains information about a secure socket tunneling protocol VPN? Mount the Veracrypt volume and enumerate the files inside. Okay. So I guess we'll just have to look through these one by one. Ticketing system backup, secure socket tunneling protocol VPN. Okay, backup that tar, Splunk logs. Okay, let's CD into that directory. And then we could grep for VPN. So we could do -IRN VPN and try to find it that way. Microsoft Agile VPN. So Splunk logs 1203. Okay, let's CD into the Splunk logs. Splunk log, or just cat it. Is it a directory? Oh, we're not in there. Okay, so yeah, we'll just have to cat it. So okay, let's open this. Okay. I don't think that's it. Let's try to unzip this ticketing system backup folder. It might be in there. Or we could try the VOS backup folder. We might have to unzip these and then, because we're not going to be able to grab what's inside these until we zip them. So let's unzip these. And now let's grep. Okay, still the same thing. All right, let's try the tar. Tar X. Okay, what was it? It was tar. I forget the syntax on how to unzip stuff or unzip tar files. So I got to go back to my notes. Tar-XF. Okay, tar-XF. No space left on disk. Okay, so we have stuff in here now. So it's in the config. Config.boot. So we can try that and see if we're config.boot. Okay. Okay, let me sign back into my account. Not sure why it logged me out. Probably timed out. Go back. to our machines. And we'll try config.boot. Okay, so it is the config.boot. So what user on Phantom shares a password associated with iStanley in the config.boot file? So we have a password in here. We might have to open the file to see that password. So we'll just cd into the config, and then config.boot, we'll cat it, and we'll look for that password. Config files, a lot of the times, do have passwords in them. So this is something that you'll do on real engagements. You'll be looking through config files, router configs, network config files. Oftentimes, they contain hard-coded passwords. And you see right here, we have the password for the L Stanley user. So we'll just copy this. We'll copy this whole thing, so don't forget it, because this is a complex, not easy to remember password. So we'll just go back to our home directory, go back to our desktop. And then we're going to save this into creds.txt. L Stanley. And then we'll just do netexec. And then I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to authenticate and get a shell with these creds. So we're going to check and see if we have WinRM access. So if you guys remember from our initial, let's move this over here so you guys can see. But if you guys remember from our initial nmap scan, port 5985 was open, which is WinRM. L Stanley. Why is this not working? Okay, so it didn't accept that. I forgot to put the host name. So this will be DC. Okay, so no WinRM access. Do they work with SMB? No, they don't. L Stanley. What user on Phantom shares the password associated? Oh, okay. We need to spray that password. So I'm guessing it wants us to spray the password and see who else is sharing that same password. So we have to do another password spray. So password reuse is what we're checking for. DC. We'll just erase this, and we'll just copy and paste that password in here. And then we'll just do another password spray. So password sprays are very common. You're going to be doing this on real engagements. If you do any type of internal network pen testing, you're going to be doing password sprays. So you definitely want to know how to do this. And then we'll just give it the users file. Okay, so we're not in the directory, so we'll have to use the full path. So we'll just do home, name, desktop, HTTP, Phantom, and then users. Just give it the path to the file that contains the username list. And then we need to make sure we do continue on success. So that way it doesn't stop after the first successful authentication. And we can ignore the ones that say guest, because those aren't real user accounts. Okay, so it was the service underscore SSPR. So we have more credentials. So we'll just save this into our creds.txt file. we'll just remove this since these didn't actually work. All right, and then evil WinRM should work with this user. Pretty sure it'll work. Service underscore SSPR. So yeah, pwn. So whenever you see pwn, that basically means we're able to get a shell or get code execution with these credentials. So we can WinRM. So we could use evil WinRM to get a shell as this service account. So we're just gonna copy and paste this name in here to answer this question. And then we're just, all that's left is to just get the user flag. So you can do evil WinRM like so. You do evil WinRM, and then you do -I, and then you'll give it the host name, and then you use the -U flag, and then you'll specify the username, and then you'll use the -P flag, and then we'll specify the password. And then, all right, now we can go into their desktop and get the flag. Let's cat this out. Now we have the first flag. Wait, it's the wrong one. Okay, so now the next question indicates that we need to run Bloodhound. So what permission does service SSPR have over 3 other users on the domain according to Bloodhound? So we just need to run Bloodhound. So we're gonna exit. So if you never use Bloodhound or you're not familiar with it, so Bloodhound is a tool that will allow you to essentially map out the entire domain and to find vulnerabilities, abusing permissions that different users have over other users. So it's basically just a way to easily map out a path to get to the domain controller or to pwn the domain controller. It can show you different permissions different objects have over other objects. It can show you, vulnerable paths. It can show you Kerber roastable users, Azure roastable users. It pretty much can show you all the vulnerabilities you have in your environment. So it's useful for an attacker. It's useful for defenders who want to find vulnerabilities and find holes in their network. Attackers use it to find holes within an AD environment so they can best compromise the domain. And that's basically what Bloodhound is used for. It's for penetration testers so that way they can find vulnerabilities in your environment and to figure out a way to get to your domain controller. So we can install it. It already comes pre-installed on Kali Linux, but I like using it with a Docker container. I just think it works better that way. So this is how to install it with the Docker setup. So if you go to the Spectre Ops website, if you just Google Spectre Ops Bloodhound, it should be the very first link. And we'll just copy and paste links in here. And it's going to download the file for us. And then we just need to unpack the file. So we'll just copy and paste this command. Unexpected end of file. What? Oh, it's because I'm in the wrong directory. That's why. I need to go back to my desktop. So let me get out of this backup file, this Veracrypt backup file, and go back to my home folder. All right. And now we'll run the wget command within here. And then now we'll just unpack it. Okay. And then we just run the install command. Okay. We have to install Docker. Okay, just install Docker. Okay, I need to start Docker. Start Docker after installing. I don't remember the syntax for starting it, so just look it up real quick. So sudo systemctl start Docker. Systemctl start Docker. .cli. Work. Oh, that didn't work. What? Docker.cli. Okay. Let's copy this in here. Okay, sudo install the full Docker engine. Okay. Sudo, okay, now sudo systemctl start docker. Okay. Okay, it should be, okay, Docker has been started and is enabled, so we should be able to run the Bloodhound install command. Oh, you need to run it with sudo. Okay, that didn't work. Let's try this again. So that's the thing about penetration testing, is that sometimes things work, sometimes things don't work. This is a fresh Kali image, so I'm having to reinstall everything, and not everything works as cleanly as you always expect it. So you're going to run into issues and you have to troubleshoot things, and you bang your head on the wall for 20, 30 minutes before you find something that works. So that's part of penetration testing, is trial and error. Let's run this again. Unable to locate Docker Compose. It's just Docker-compose. Okay. So Bloodhound. Okay, now let's run this. Okay. Seems like it's working now. And once this is done, it should show us our password, and we'll be able to use that admin password to authenticate into the GUI. Okay, so we have our admin password here. So you want to make sure you save this into a file that we can easily go back and, because you don't want to lose this. Because once you clear the screen, you can't actually go back and look at this password. So we'll just save this into credits.txt. To access the GUI, so it was stood up on localhost at port 8080. So we'll just open up our Firefox browser and then copy and paste that. And then for the email address, it'll just be admin, and then it'll be this long password. So if you guys never used Bloodhound before, this is definitely something that you're going to need to know. If you're studying for the OSCP, you will need to know how to use Bloodhound. And it's very simple to use and very easy to use, especially once you get the hang of it. But I'll just give you a brief rundown on how to actually use it. So first thing we need to do is we need to generate these JSON files. So these JSON files are what's going to contain like all the information about the domain. So there's LDAP queries that we can run that will generate these JSON files for us. So all Bloodhound is just a visualization tool. You need to put the data into it. So we can generate that data using different tools. So I'm just gonna clear my screen here. And then, so there's numerous tools that we can use, but one that I like is Bloodhound Python. Or you can even use netexec. Netexec is a little bit easier to remember. So we'll just do LDAP. You have to use the LDAP protocol, and then it'll be DC and then -U, and then you'll have to give it the creds that we currently have. So SSPR and then -P, and then give the password. And then you'll use the -- bloodhound flag, and then you would do -C. We'll do all, and that should be it. We could not find a domain controller, so there's a flag that we need to give it for the domain controller. I believe it was attack H command. I believe it's -DC -IP, but I just want to make sure. Yeah, if it can't find a domain controller, the command won't work. So we have to manually specify, even though we're running this command against the domain controller, you still have to specify it using the flag. I'm not sure why Bloodhound Python works that way. DNS. Okay, I don't see one for domain controller, but I do see one for DNS server. And then this would just be the IP. Let's close some of these tabs. I'm gonna close some of these. Oh man. Okay, so I don't see an option for the domain controller or to specify the domain controller like it wants us to. Do not see an option on here. I just see DNS server. So we might have to use Bloodhound Python. DC list. Okay, so we can do this with Bloodhound Python. So there's numerous tools that you can collect this data with. You always want to have a spare tool just in case one doesn't work, just like in this example. I'm not sure why it's not showing the DC IP flag. I could have sworn that there was one because I've used NetExec before plenty of times, but it's okay. We can just use Bloodhound Python, and let's look up the syntax. And okay, so we'll use Bloodhound -Python, and then we'll use the -D flag, and we'll give it the domain name, which is phantom.vl. And then username service _SSPR, and the password is down here. Copy and paste the password in here. And then the -DC flag is going to be the domain controller. So we'll copy this in here. Okay, didn't like that. What the hell just happened? Okay, put me on a new line. I'm not sure why. Let's just type this in here. 234.63. And what else do we need? That should be everything we need. Okay, we'll run it. Or no, we have to specify the collection method. So this will be -C, and we can do all. Could not find a global catalog server. Okay, so it can't find the DNS server. So the domain controller is the DNS server. So we'll have to do a separate flag and for that as well. And that will be -NS. And then should just be DC. DC. Okay, we have to use an IP address. 10.129.234.63. Okay, so this needs to be the host name. So the domain controller needs to be the host name. The name server needs to be an IP. dc.phantom.vl. A lot of these tools, the syntax is very like specific. If you don't have the syntax correct, a lot of these tools don't work. So we get another error. Okay, server connecting to failed to get kernels, error connection, service _ SSPR. Okay, the domain controller, I spelled it wrong. Phantom. Okay, and it works now. And what this command is doing is it's just enumerating the domain. So it's just running a bunch of LDAP queries against the domain controller to get like all the objects within the domain. So it's getting all the users. So it's 30 users. It's getting all the groups. It's getting the GPOs that these users and groups are a part of. It's going to get the OUs as well as the containers. And if there was any trust, so if this was like a multi-tier domain environment, it would get the trust between those domains. And it's going to get the relationships between these users. So if certain users have certain permissions to, over another user, let's say they have generic write or generic all over another object, we'll be able to see that as well. And it's going to store all that information into these JSON files. So if we ls, we now have all these JSON files, which contains all the information about the domain. And we could like cat these files, but it's going to be very hard to read, right? Because it's JSON format. So that's what Bloodhound is for. It's to make this a lot easier to read and to basically give you a visual of what you need to do to compromise the domain. And it will even show you the commands that you can run that will abuse different privileges as well. So we're just going to click right here. If you click in the middle right here, and then we'll just upload these JSON files and then just highlight all of them. And then we'll just open and you just upload. All right, and then we'll just close it, and it might take a few minutes. I always like to put mine in dark mode. Makes it a little bit easier to see. And then we're just gonna minimize this a little bit, drag this out so you guys can see this a lot easier. And the first thing I like to do is whenever I'm looking at Bloodhound, I like to look at the users that I control or the users that I have credentials for and search for them. And there's under the search feature. It still hasn't updated yet. Okay, so it's updated now. So we have credentials for the service _ SSPR user. So we're just going to click this user. And then if we double click it, we have all this different information about this user. So we can see, password last set, password never expires is set to true, password not required false. We have their SAM account name, got the domain FUDN. So this account is enabled. We have the object ID. It was created 2024, July the 4th, have the distinguished name. So we have everything, essentially, all the stuff that you would see just by like logging into the domain controller. You know how if you log into the domain controller, you click on a user, you're able to see everything about that user. You're able to see all their different attributes. We can essentially see that here. We can see all their groups. So it's part of the domain users group. It's part of the remote management users. So this is what allowed us to get the WinRM session. it wasn't a part of the remote management users group, we wouldn't have been able to remote in. So SSPR service group, I'm not sure what that's for. But what I like to do is whenever I'm looking at Bloodhound is I like to look at outbound object control. So if we click on outbound object control, basically what that means is we're able to modify or, modify the attributes of other accounts. So this user service underscore SSPR has force change password over these 3 accounts. So that basically means we can change these accounts passwords without even knowing the password. And then we can then authenticate into those users. And then once we change their passwords, we can then look and see what outbound permissions that they have. And that is how hackers move within a domain, or map out a path. So what I like to do is if we click on pathfinding here and we do service underscore SSPR, and then we just type in the domain controller or the domain dc.phantom.vo, it will show us the path to compromise this domain controller using this account. So it shows us the path that we need to take to be able to get here. And that's essentially what Bloodhound does, is it maps out a path to compromise the domain. So since we have force change password, we could essentially change any one of these users' accounts. And then once, we have access to these accounts, we then have access to this group. So the ICT security group, which gives us the allow to act permission over the domain controller. So let's start off with the force change password. So we'll just pick anyone. We'll do the C rows user. And the good thing about Bloodhound is if you just click where it says force change password and we click Linux abuse, it will give us the command that we can copy and paste to literally change the password, which is pretty cool. So Bloodhound does a lot of the work for you. You just need to know how to use it. So we're just going to copy and paste this password in here, or this command in here. And then we'll just need to fill in our information, obviously. So we'll change domain controller to the actual dc.phantom.vo. And you always want to do single quotes. Whenever you're typing in passwords, you always want to use single quotes because the terminal won't be able to parse the password correctly. And you can very easily lock out accounts if it has special characters in it and you're using double quotes and not single quotes. So always just be sure to use single quotes, because that has actually happened in a real engagement where, some teammates were locked out an account because they were using double quotes and not single quotes, and the password had a special character in there. And the bash terminal is kind of weird on Kali. It won't parse passwords correctly if you're using double quotes versus single quotes. So just make sure you always use single quotes whenever you're typing in passwords. So let's copy and paste this password in here. And then control user is going to be the service underscore SSPR. Domain is going to be phantom.vl. And then new password, this can be anything. We'll just do password 123 exclamation point. Target user, so it's going to be the C rows. Okay, so it looked like it worked. So we can just test it. We'll just do netexec smb C rows. Okay, and that worked. So we now own this account. So another thing you can do is you can mark these accounts as owned as well as you get credentials. Okay, so if we right click, okay, the terminal is covering up, add to owned. And then now we can add this one to own. I'm not going to bother changing the password for these 2 accounts since we already own this one and it's already a member of this group. So it's kind of redundant. But if you wanted to get extra practice, you could do that as well. So we're now a member of this group, which has the add allowed to act on the domain controller. So I believe this is the resource-based constraint delegation. So add allowed to act. So and a cool thing about this is if you're not really too familiar with what these permissions do or what they are, if you click on general up here, it will tell you about it and what it does. And also you can Google what it is as well. So there's a bunch of documentation that explains what these permissions allow you to do and what you can do with them. But this is resource-based constraint delegation. So, which is kind of complicated, but not that complicated. If it's your first time doing it, then yeah, you might be a little bit too much for you. But basically what that means is with resource-based constraint delegation, that basically means a domain object can act on the behalf of other domain objects. So let's say you have a computer account and that computer account can delegate to other objects within the domain. Essentially what that means is that computer account can act on the behalf of other users. So what that privilege enables that computer account to do is it will store their TGTs in that computer's memory whenever a user authenticates into that computer. And if we control that computer account, we can then grab those TGTs from that computer's memory and use those TGTs to authenticate as that user. So that's essentially what resource-based constraint delegation is. So we need to create a malicious computer account and then coerce another user or the domain controller to authenticate into it. Once that domain controller authenticates into our malicious computer account, we now have the domain controller's TGT. We can then use that TGT or ticket granting ticket to then authenticate as the domain controller and then do a DC sync. So that might be a little bit too complicated for